Hey guys, welcome to the special edition of the Scouting Report. This is Pop here, and I'm joined in by Rui from the RCR and the FC Porto English podcast. How are you going, Roy?
I'm doing fantastic, man. Thank you for having me on. I'm really excited to talk all things Fabio Vieira with you guys. It's I'm a little sad that he's leaving because he had an unbelievable year, but I'm also excited to see how he's going to do next year with you guys. You guys have a little bit of a project going on, and it looks like it's going in the positive direction. I'm going to be rooting for him. I hope he does well and gets Arsenal back on track where they should be.
Oh, really? Okay. No, that's really a much better start than I expected because I mean, being a Porto fan yourselves, I thought the inseparable loss of you losing Vieira would be more than the excitement for you to feature in an Arsenal team. So it's really different from what I had expected from you.
I mean, that's just the cycle of Porto. We can never get attached to players that do so well because they're never going to stick around. Because the opportunities to play at a higher level, to play and compete for a Champions League team or play, in a better competition is always abroad. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. So, we're happy that he did well. He's a youth product, and at the end of the day, I'm a little bit upset that he only left for 35 million, but it's 35 million in profits that the club is going to get. So it's at the end of the day, these players will never stay at the club for a long time. So you do want to root for them to do well because they brought so much to the club over the years, and you want them to do well.
Oh, totally, totally. No, I think appreciate the goodwill gesture. Just taking a step back. So I think many of them, even myself including, this was actually a bolt of the blue for most Arsenal fans. None of them saw this coming until it was reported by Onstein and Roman or Fabrizio and all those sort of people. But just taking a step back, where I mean, who is Fabio Vieira for people who don't know him?
So Fabio Vieira is an attacking midfielder. He's a part of our, as I mentioned before, he's a part of our youth academy. Won the Champions League in the for the youth Champions League or the Youth League in 2019. One player of the tournament in last year's Euro U21 in 2021. So he's a young talent, fantastic on the ball, great ball distributor, great vision, knows how to hold up play, good set piece taker. He's got a lot of qualities that a lot of big clubs are expecting in players that are a true number 10, players that can really grasp the game and take control on the attacking front and distribute the ball. So he had a breakout season this year after Luis Diaz left in January. I think it was his second start of the season was in December against Benfica, and that was the game Luis Diaz caught coronavirus, and he was out, and he had the game of his life, and he played a fantastic game. And from that point on, he was playing at an absolute high level. It felt like it was a new signing that Luis Diaz left, and then Fabio Vieira just emerged into the scene and just did his thing. So he's a fantastic player. He definitely has the potential to be a top class player in the future among the best in the world. So the only question is how he's going to adapt into the Premier League, because the Premier League, if I were to put things into perspective, like to compare the Premier League to the Portuguese league, is that everything in the Premier League is about or a quarter to a half a second faster. So the decision making, the pace, everything is completely different, and some players can adapt to it, and that's why they don't do as well into the English Premier League. But if they do adapt, they can be top class players like Bruno Fernandes and Kevin De Bruyne and so many others that flourish in that position. And I think Fabio Vieira does have the capabilities for that.
Oh, totally, totally. I mean, if you were to give a bit of an background in terms of his progression from the youth career, I mean, I read through a lot of articles where he started his youth career back in 2008, and then he came into the first team back in October 2020. That's when he made his start, I think, for the first team. So if you could just give a background on his journey from the youth team and then how he's been progressing along in all the lower place, sorry, youth setup?
Yeah, him and like so many others, Porto have had this golden generation with Francisco Conceição, who's the Suns coach. He's a few years younger than him, and Vitinha. Obviously, Vitinha is this guy that's been talked about so much. He was definitely our best player this season. Him, João Mario, even Diogo Costa, our goalkeeper, they all came up in the ranks at the same time. They're all more or less the same exact age. And what they've been able to do for so many years in the youth level. And then, as I mentioned before, in 2019, they brought the youth league title to Porto, the first Portuguese team to win it. And from then on, they all five of them have slowly made their way into the first team. And in 2020, June of 2020, Fabio Vieira actually made his debut on the senior team, and I think his first game that he started was against Sporting in 2020, and he had a fantastic game. I think he scored a goal in that game, and the following season he was thrown into the mix, where he wasn't a starter. He didn't really contribute as much, but after that Euro tournament in 2021, where he was the best player in that tournament, is when we started seeing his quality even more. And then the second he had his opportunity, when Luis Diaz left in December of 2021, he took advantage of it and he just didn't stop. He turned it on and didn't stop.
Oh, totally. I think he grabbed his chance with both his hands. Yeah. So you mentioned about the fact that it was Diaz potentially leaving, which opened up for Vieira to come in and then show what he can. Um, was it always been the case? As in, like, was he showing glimpses even before when Diaz was actually playing? So because I did see a lot of goals. Obviously, there are. I mean, if you look up YouTube, there are like thousand other compilation videos of Vieira. One of them which really stood out for me was the goal against Lyon that he scored from a Diaz's cross. Um,
Yeah,
it
at
was
one
it was
timer.
a rocket, seriously. So was he showing glimpses even before when Diaz left?
Yeah, he
Yeah.
was. He was, especially in uh, the U21 for Portugal. You saw how raw he was with talent and how natural he is with the ball, especially as a set piece taker. His deliveries, his free kicks, his corner kicks, even his long range passing is just so natural. It's almost a gift, that you're born with such natural technique. And every time the ball just comes off his foot, it's just so magical. It's always a beautiful ball. And it's so accurate, and it makes it difficult for defenders to read. So yeah, there's been a lot of glimpses, prior, when he was at Porto, going through that Champions League run with the youth team, and then with the national team for sure. With the U21s and U19s, Portugal had a great golden era, or golden squad of young players, where he was one of the better ones all the time. So there was a lot of glimpses, and he was always highly talked about. He was just another one of those players where it's just a matter of time when he's going to break out. And as I mentioned, the second he had his opportunity, he took advantage of it, and he took it on.
Totally. No, I think so. You did mention about that. Yeah. So that was indeed a golden generation. Only for them to be losing out on the finals to Germany. That was
Yeah.
quite painful to watch. I did follow that right through the end, and I thoroughly felt that they deserved a chance to be crowning the champions for that tournament. But unfortunately, it didn't turn out that way. But it has had a very positive influence on him. I mean, he obviously won the man of the tournament that time, and then he was highly touted to be the next big thing after Bruno Fernandes. So there were actually signs as what was there, but I mean, did you see that him coming into an Arsenal team of everything else?
I didn't expect this transfer at all to happen. I thought Fabio Vieira would most likely stay one more season and just get that extra rep in. and just help the team out and increase his value and get more exposure of himself. I'm a little surprised that Arsenal or anyone was really going to get him this year, or the club was actually going to let him go. Everyone talked about Vitinha leaving. We all were pretty much prepared that he was definitely going to leave. Now, both of them leaving was a bit of a shock, especially Fabio Vieira leaving before Vitinha did. So going to a club like Arsenal, I think it's a great move for Arsenal. I think they're taking a little bit of a risk because he's a young player, but for 35 million on what he can be, what he has shown that he can do, can really elevate your club. And I know you guys have a lot of you guys have an abundance of number 10s, obviously Odegaard, and Ben Smith, Ben Smith, who does play more on the wing nowadays, but he's to me, I think he's a natural number 10. And having Fabio Vieira in that mix too, it's either Fabio Vieira this season is going to be a role player that is going to come off the bench, get some reps and some performances, probably show his worth. It's a big transition going from the Portuguese league to the EPL, but it's definitely a move that can be there for the future. 35 million for a young kid that could potentially go for 85, 100 million in the future. So if anything were to happen to Odegaard or Ben Smith, you have Fabio Vieira that you can rely on, hopefully, that can fill the void. In the meantime, maybe he can be that Luis Diaz for Liverpool, come off that bench and just get some performances, get that extra spark to get victories and good results.
Yeah, no. You keep mentioning Ben Smith. It's actually Emily Smith Rowe. So
Smith Rowe. No, Ben Smith.
Emily
Ben
Smith.
Smith is center back. I'm sorry.
All good, all
Yeah,
good.
Smith
You're
Rowe.
pardoned because you're not an Arsenal fan, so it's all right. It's all right. You don't, yeah. Perfectly fine. I'm just about to be inviting another guest. Abayomi is just waiting on the wing stairs, and he would like to come in and then share a few words. He's a blogger, and he writes for Behind the Lines for the famous Zach Lowe's team. So he's written numerous articles, one in special about Fabio Vieira. So it's just a pleasure for us to pull him in and then get his thoughts in. Hey, Abayomi, how are you going?
Well, good afternoon. Good afternoon, Ruiz. Good afternoon, everybody.
Afternoon.
Afternoon.
Mate. Afternoon.
Buenas tardes.
Yes. So Abayomi, do you want to give a quick intro about yourselves? I did mention to the viewers that so you're a journalist writing for Behind the Lines. Anything more that you want to add?
Okay. I'm just a freelance writer for Breaking the Lines. I do player analysis for them, and I also do some introspective thoughts on football, just purely football, nothing else.
Nothing. Awesome. I think
Nothing.
that's a great thing to have. Abayomi, I've been quizzing Rui quite a lot, and he's been pouring quite a lot of things about Fabio Vieira, the man in question at the moment. So, what's your thoughts on Fabio Vieira? If you were to be concise and then just summarize what he is or what he offers.
All right, thank you. Like I told you yesterday, I was privileged to speak with some Porto fans on Twitter. And the first statement they made was that he was a great passer of the ball. He has a good distribution rate, and it is more of a number 10 who can play as an attacking central midfield. He can play on the left wing, he can play on the right, and he can also play as a supporting striker. So that was one of the things they told me. Though Don Santos has spoke about his career aspect, how he began coming in from a youth team at a very tender age of 8, then coming in, waiting for that long for him to get into his first debut for the senior team. I think it was after his triumph in the UEFA Champions League Youth League, which they won against Chelsea, beating Chelsea 3-1, which he scored He scored an important goal. Then he came in again in the previous year, which was the 2019-2020 season, which they lost to Salzburg, RPL Salzburg in Germany in the playoff round. Then he went on to show his endurance. Meanwhile, coming in against Boavista, against Man City in the 2019-2020 Champions League, which he lost to Man City at that time. He came
Yes.
in as a substitute. Then
Yep.
he came in against Olympiacos too, which is starting as he was a starter at first. Then he scored his first goal in that particular match. Then
Okay.
he went ahead, proving himself despite being a substitute, despite coming in as a substitute, though he was promoted in 2020-2021 after the pandemic season. But at
Okay.
the time, there were a lot of competition in the team. We have Luis Diaz around, we have Octavio around, we had so many people in his position that were around that time. So he had to keep coming in from the junior team or from the reserve team to come and play. Then when he was promoted, he was coming in as a substitute, not until Luis Diaz left and his contract was extended. That was in November last year. So that shows that he's a player with a lot of patience. He knows when to strike. He understands his game better, and his vision of the game is fantastic. So that is what I think Arsenal fans are going to enjoy
Oh, yeah,
following
totally.
those
Totally.
following what I've said. Then it's also good with precision in terms of
No,
free kick.
hang on, mate. Hang on. You don't say everything at once. I'll
Okay.
actually split up that based on the way that our viewers would like to hear.
Okay.
Rui, I'll just shift it to you. Now, I'll probably ask you a question. So we know the fact that the FC Porto's coach Sergio Conceição is much more like he's got a lot of traits like Diego Simeone in his style. He's very direct, and then he's pretty hard on in his approach. How do you think that he would be able to adapt himself to the Arteta's philosophy at Arsenal?
So at Porto, I think this season was a bit more unique because Porto played a more pretty style of play, more possession style, where the traditional Sergio Conceição ball, which we still saw this season, we saw the capabilities at Porto were much more diverse because of the quality of players and the system that Conceição was deploying. It was very versatile.
He
He can
almost
be,
went the entire season unbeaten, except for
yeah,
you to lose the game.
yeah, exactly. So obviously Conceição is kind of like that Diego Simeone like style of coach, very organized, very defensive. This season we saw mixes of everything. So, and a lot of that fluidity, that beautiful football came from players like Fabio Vieira, like Luis Diaz, and Vitinha. So, I think a lot of what Fabio Vieira has learned throughout the years, as Abayomi mentioned, very patient, waiting so long to get his opportunity, and then when he got it, he absolutely flourished. I think those are traits that go a long way when you go into the EPL because you have to have that mental toughness, you have to have that maturity, you have to have patience as well. So going into Arsenal, the way that he's played, everything that he's learned at Porto, I think it can adapt because he has that understanding of playing in a system that's very organized, very determined, very tough. And then when he goes to a team where he can actually unleash his qualities, he's going to be given the license to do what he does best more than he did at Porto. And he's going to work with a lot of good players, young players that have that flair, that have that technique, have that ability to play good football. I think he's going to have that time like he did at Porto, where he's going to have his opportunity to shine and he's going to take advantage of it. So going to Arsenal, going to Mikel Arteta's style of play, I think he can really adapt well and really just go for it and just explode and blossom into a player that he's projected to be.
Okay. Abayomi, this is more a question for you. So you mentioned the fact that Vieira has actually played in multiple positions. What do you think would be his stronger area if we were to be sticking on to a position that he's more comfortable in? Obviously, I was just looking at a few stats, and it was quite astonishing. In the last season, that he's played 16 times as an attacking mid, 13 times as a second striker, 4 times in the left midfield, 2 times as a right winger, 1 time as a central midfielder. That's quite a lot of positions in the ground. So I think the few positions that he has not held up is probably the central defense areas. So what do you think would be the natural position that he would fit in at Arsenal?
Thank you. Like I stated earlier, he can play different varieties of position. He's an attacking central midfielder, but with Odegaard available, I don't know. Depending now, it's the question now is that we have to talk about the idea of the coach. What does the coach want him to do on the pitch of play, and where does he want to put him? Because he can play as an attacking central midfielder, he can play as a supporting striker, he can play on the left and right wing of the midfield. Then he also has the capability to defend. So your answer to that question is that where does Arteta want to put him, or what strategy or idea or playing style is Arteta bringing in that would suit his style of play, or that would suit his position, because he's a very versatile player. Like I said, he can play anywhere around the midfield, and he has a good defensive ability too, aside the offensive one. So it all matters what the idea that Arteta wants to push, how he wants to play, who he wants to pair him with, and the tactical approach of Arteta to the team. So that's the basic. That would be one of the basic things that I would touch on. Then the Arsenal is an attacking team for sure, but at recent times we've seen changes in approach, in the pragmatic approach. For example, transiting from the offensive or the possession style of football, which we know Man City for, to the high press and tracking back with this Thomas Partey, and Thomas Partey being the core man of the midfield. So I think it says a lot about what he will bring. But for sure, it's going to bring creativity. But we also have to look at the approach, the tactical approach of Arteta to this that will suit Vieira, and the position that will be suitable for him in that situation of the game.
You mentioned about Thomas Partey. So Rui, this is more. So I was just wondering. So the one of the reasons for Vieira to really shine, this season, is because of the presence of Vitinha. How much do you think it would matter for them both to be in two different teams? Obviously, with Vitinha more likely going to be joining PSG now. How do you think that absence would actually hurt Vieira?
I don't know exactly, because I mean, with Vieira, I think obviously having a player like Vitinha made his job easier. But there's times Vieira was able to just completely take over the game and even outplay Vitinha. So going to a team like Arsenal, who would you have in your midfield? You would have Thomas Partey. Would you still have Xhaka lined up in a double pivot with them?
Right.
I think Vitinha is a better ball player than the both of them, but I think the supporting cast of Arsenal is far greater in terms of the attack, or maybe not so much the striker position, but at least in the wingers, and even playing alongside a guy like Odegaard. If he were to be playing out in the wing with Odegaard, I think it's just going to make it easier for him, and maybe it would even make the job easier for Odegaard to take all that burden and pressure off of him, because if Fabio Vieira does flourish and his qualities do emerge onto the scene in the first season, defenses are going to shift the focus on Vieira and even make the job easier for Odegaard, or vice versa. So I think Fabio Vieira is going to adapt just fine, because there's plenty of quality still there on Arsenal. For him to
Just
do
a
his thing.
follow-up question on that. So we know the fact that Vitinha played for a spell at Wolves in the past. That didn't probably go well. So just along the lines of that, how do you think Fabio Vieira can actually come in and settle in the Premier League as such, a league which is very, quite decisive and then quite physical in the game style and all those sort of things, much more fluid when you compare the Premier League, with all due respect. So how do you actually compare the transition between them and there?
For Vitinha, I think he was just more out of position at Wolverhampton, because naturally he came in as a number 10, just like Fabio Vieira, and there was no doubt that he would flourish there. He would do well, but he really grasped the game even more, playing in a deeper position where he can sit back and set the tone, set the tempo in transitions, pressing on the defensive side. I think his bread and butter, Vitinha, was being able to just completely control the game, having the ability to avoid the pressure. He's just very calm that way. Where in a more of attacking role, it's just not really for him. He can definitely do it, but he's not as fluid and as natural as Fabio Vieira is as a number 10. So with Wolverhampton, I guess, it was 2 years ago. He was 2 years younger, didn't have that much experience in the Primeira Liga at the time. Fabio Vieira's transition is a little bit different. He's 2 years older. He has experience. He's won already trophies, done well in youth tournaments with the national team and with Porto's youth team. Did fantastic in his first season as an actual starter, leading us to a championship. Basically filled the shoes for Luis Diaz, who is one of the better players that we've ever had in recent times. It was a huge loss, and he stepped up. That just shows the maturity that Fabio Vieira has. He has that adaptation skills to adapt to the situation and perform. Now it's like going into the EPL is always hard to adapt to. It's never easy for any player. Some players have it, some players don't. So that's just a big question. I think he can adapt well, and I think with the players at Arsenal and that project that they have going on with so many young players that are kind of emerging into the scene, and they're playing better football, I think he can adapt well into their team and into the league.
Yeah. Abayomi, I'll just shift the focus onto you. So you know the fact that last season for Porto he played 27 games, out of which 15 were starts. There were about 20 goal contributions, 6 goals and 14 assists. Was it just a one season wonder? Because we've had players of such profiles coming into the team before with Nicola Pepe, which didn't quite turn out. How different are they both? As in, like, do you see this sort of continuing? As he comes into Arsenal.
Well, on that question, on that
I stumped you
question,
with that question.
well, Let me start with Nicolas Pepe. On Nicolas Pepe's part, it's quite sad he had the season he had at Arsenal, but I wouldn't know what really happened to him, because when he was at Benfica, he wasn't playing that bad.
No,
But
no,
I
no.
think
So he was playing for he is playing for Lille. Sorry.
Lille, sorry. When he was playing for Lille, he wasn't playing that bad, but I don't. I think he has to do with the psychological mode of the Premier League brings to the to the players. The question now will be: are these players strong to stand the rigor of the Premier League? Can they stand the pressure? Can they stand the intensity of play? Can they stand the complex tactical approach from different coaches, which is which was one of the major problems Nicolas Pepe had with Arteta. There was he had difficulty in interpreting tactical approach. He sometimes he went off guard with his teammates. There was no team chemistry and all. I think it is one which is one of those problems Vieira will have to look at when he's coming in. Okay, he's in a different league, because though Primera Liga I've watched a few matches, and it's intense, but not as intense as the Premier League side. So the question now is he really prepared for that intensity, that high intensity the Premier League will bring, and those complex tactical approach? For example, he might be given a number 10 role, which is to play the ball behind the striker, to feed the strikers. But at the same time, he might be told at us now to be pushing forward, or to push the ball back, or to drop a bit deeper. So
Yeah. So
and
if you look at his goal per assist contribution per 90 minutes, right? It's actually better than some of the biggest names in the Premier League. So it's better than Mason Mount, Madison, Nkunku, Florian Wirtz of Leverkusen, and then Kevin De Bruyne. I mean, this is too good
yes,
to be true.
yes. There's no doubt about the stats. But what I'm saying in this aspect is that can he replicate those? Can he replicate that form in a complex situation like the Premier League? That is what I'm driving
Yeah.
at, in a very complex tactical system where everything is all about pressure and intensity. You have to press
Yeah.
high, you have to lead the attack, you have to recover the ball, and you have to where in the Premier League, where they judge by your duel with the ball more than your passes, the number of passes. So I think the question is that can he be able to cope with that kind of intensity? But he's a great player. Is a very intelligent player who understands what to do, who understands a team system. So with his kind of quality, he should be able to read the games. He should be able to read the game. He should be able to. I believe he should be able to understand with his awareness of the ball. He should be able to understand certain situations and what it needs to.
Yeah. No.
What
Yeah. So just on that, actually. So we spoke about you mentioned about he's quite an intelligent player. At Porto, Rui, that he is actually the set piece taker, isn't it? So he's quite a dead ball specialist there. So he knows
Yeah.
exactly where to place it in. Could you actually talk a bit more on his set piece abilities, and then his dribbling and ball control sort of things, and how he's been exhibiting those in games?
Yeah, he's a great set piece taker. He scored quite a few free kicks with the youth team for Portugal. I don't believe he scored a free kick with us, but a lot of his deliveries from his free kicks and his corner kicks are just, sublime. He's really got a way of striking the ball in a way that it makes it even harder for, not only is it accurate, it's even harder for defenders to judge the ball. So it's all going to come down to timing and execution on the players making runs or their positionings on corner kicks to be on the back end of those crosses. So his set piecing ability is really, really good. I think that's something that Arsenal could, or any team in the
Yeah,
EPL can
I think it's
really
going to be
could
a
really use.
direct competition for Odegaard as such,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it's an extra it's an extra trait that any club can use because not everyone has great dead ball specialists, and he's really good at it. In terms of ball control and dribbling, really good dribbler. Sometimes he can be a little bit selfish at time, wanting to look a little bit prettier and take on that extra defender, and sometimes it can be costly. But he is still young, and that's something that you adapt with time, that you learn over time with experience and with being a more mature footballer. That's something that's easily to be corrected. In terms of ball control, much like Vitinha, he's just really good at, as Abayomi mentioned, precise passing, very intelligent, knows when to make the right passes, knows when to make the passes and not do too many risky passes where it will lead to turnovers and lead to counterattacks for the opposition. He just kind of knows when is the right time to make those decisions, and he's very accurate with his passing. And on top of it all, his long shot as well, incredible from outside the box. And not only with his dominant left foot, with his right foot, he's able to score too. So he scored quite a few goals this season with his weaker foot, big goals, and even a couple of them came from outside the box. So he's got a really good arsenal to use. And I do want to agree with. I want to touch up on what Abayomi said about adapting into the Premier League. That's just the biggest question, and it's not so much just the tactical side; it's more the physicality side. Being quick enough, everything is faster, everything is stronger, so you have to be sharper. The pace on your passes need to be quicker and accurate. It can't be as slow as in the Portuguese league. Everything is quicker, and that's what separates players like Nicolas Pepe, who's a wonderful player on his day, but he just doesn't adapt. Players like Ndombele at Tottenham, fantastic player when he was at
I
Lyon.
won't admit it, but yeah, go ahead.
I mean, I thought he was, and he came back this season on loan to Lyon and did rather well and had pretty good performances. So that's like the separation there. Not everyone adapts well. Even Romelu Lukaku coming back from Serie A, who dominated Serie A, but goes into the EPL. It's that physicality. It's the pace of the game. You need to be quicker. He's not going to be running past defenders like he was in Serie A. He's not going to be bodying all these players like he did in Serie A. It's a different animal when it comes to the EPL. Not so much on the tactical side or the technical side. It's the physicality where players do struggle with,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
I like this comment from my mate. He said Vieira at last. Really, he spelled it wrong, but still, it means quite a lot for us to have the Vieira name back in the Arsenal team. That's the last of our glory days. I can't wait for those to come back again. I'm pretty sure Fabio would come in and replace. I mean, at least in the namesake for now. It's such a name. One thing that you were touching upon, Rui, I did see that from another comment. For all the Porto's games that just been seen, Fabio Vieira has the skill of Bernardo Silva, pass of Ruben Neves, and irrelevance of Raul Meireles. I agree with the first two, but then the third one sort of scares me, seriously. We've seen Meireles during his time at Chelsea, so I'm sort of not a big fan of him, with what he does. So I'm not sure. Do you sort of agree with that? I've not seen much of games lately, so I don't know.
Oh yeah, he has. I don't know that those are pretty big names. I think the passing ability of Ruben Neves is pretty spot on. But I mean, Ruben Neves is also a fantastic set piece taker too. Great with long shots. I think like 88% of his goals or whatever it is came from outside the box. Can't really say the same about Fabio Vieira, but Fabio Vieira definitely has those abilities. Bernardo Silva, that's just he is a top class player, and I think it's just a matter of time that Fabio Vieira can get to that level.
Yeah.
So yeah, I maybe he can get to that level. I think he definitely has that ceiling, and it's just all a matter of him performing and getting there. And as for the irreverence of Raul Meireles, and no one's ever going to be like Raul Meireles. That guy is just a flamboyant character. So I don't really see Fabio Vieira having that level of irreverence. So that's the only thing I'll disagree with. He has Meireles vibes.
Abayomi, I have a question for you. What's
right.
the boy's temperament like? What sort of character he is personally?
Well, like I stated earlier on, looking at how he came into the senior team, I think he. I don't think he complained too much. Studying, coming in as a substitute more than 33 times. If in 33 matches, which was in 2020, 2019, 2020, even though he was promoted into the senior team, for him to have waited for that long for the sales of Luis Diaz to Liverpool in January, and been shifting to a position he was not used to. So it shows that he's a versatile player who is ready to adapt. He has a good sense of adaptability because he played as a supporting striker. Meanwhile, he was an attacking central midfielder. So for him to have played well in that position, it shows that is a versatile player. He has the ability to adapt at any position, irrespective of, as long as he's not a goalkeeper. So as long as it's an as long as an outfit, it's not an outfit position, he has the adaptability to learn. And one thing I noticed about him was this. He has this grit, and he has this sense of awareness, which I've seen in some of his videos, which I remember Mesut Ozil for. Players who
I'm
are
getting the mirrorless vibes actually. So with Ozil.
so players who are aware of okay, I understand this person's movement, so I know the kind of pass I'm supposed to give him. So let me give him either a bounce pass, or let me give him a diagonal pass or an horizontal pass, or whichever, depending on where the players is coming from. So I think he has that in mind. But one thing I like him for is his endurance. He's not too quicky. He's not too. He's not too. He's not too wherever he is always adaptable. He's adaptable to whatever situation he's in. But aside that, he's an hardworking player. I won't take that from him. He's a very hardworking player. He's a very he can cover, and at the same time he can orchestrate play from the back. Sometimes it starts from the middle. Sometimes, which Rui has mentioned, he can also help as a pivot player too. So sometimes he orchestrates from the defensive line, from the back line
I
down to
think with the way
forward attack.
Arteta has been playing, right? Arteta doesn't look for one player for one position. That's the way he has actually evolved this whole team. One of the reasons as to why he has actually struck his head and he has predominantly had a say in every bit of a transfer so far is he wants the players to fit in his sort of style of play, just like how Pep has been doing it. And since he was closely working with Pep at City, Arteta really wants a player who could play in at multiple players and all those sort of things. Finally, I think we are actually coming to the end of it. There's been talks of wages and all those sort of things. I heard from what I heard, it's a meager £46,000 per week. I suppose that's the wages, which is pretty much lesser than many of the top earners. And if we were to be even half decent than what he's been performing, it should be pretty good. And yeah, we did discuss the transfer fee there. It's 35 million euros guaranteed with extra add-ons. I know Rui would definitely not be happy with the sum being mentioned with with the transfers happening these days. But yeah, I think that's a steal in today's market for sure. Yeah, I think we've covered enough in terms of all about Vieira, and we've spoken more than what I had actually intended, so which was good. And the discussion was as well good. Finally, just a piece of note, Rui. I know it's very sad for you to lose such a good player from your team. It's always hard for you to lose any player. In having been in such situations before, I can quite sympathize. But seriously, I really support Porto. I mean, that's not just me telling in form of words. I've been to Portugal before, and I've actually been to Stadio do
Oh,
Dragão. I watched games there. Quite a big fan of the team, and I really want this is my memento from there. So I watched games there in 2012. So I'm quite a big fan of the team.
oh,
I
okay.
really have been following them for a long time, and really
Yeah,
want
wow,
them to succeed.
that's a huge
No,
surprise. Porto doesn't have that that name that Arsenal has throughout the world, but Porto has always developed some good players, had some good squads, won a couple of Champions League, and I was lucky to actually see it happen, which is amazing. It was an amazing moment for me. I was a little kid, but it was amazing.
oh yeah.
But yeah, Arsenal
It's a
is a
very
team that's
closely knit town. As an outsider, when I came in, I
yeah,
was I was really made to feel welcome, both by the supporters as well as even within the town in general. They
yeah,
were.
it's a great
I
place.
had a very pretty good stay, I should say, and then even within the stadium, the support was there. So they were behind the team when the team was actually trailing behind and all those sort of things, which shows that how passionate supporters were. And for such teams, you really want them to succeed. Definitely, you want them to go well, keep doing whatever that they should. So yeah, definitely worth mentioning that.
Well, I appreciate
Um,
that. Thank you.
One final comment. So, would you think Vieira would be, battling with Ode for the position? Personal opinion, I think so. Yes, because they both play in similar positions. But with considering the number of games that we have in the season, with as well Europe to work on, I'm pretty sure everyone. I mean, both of them would be okay to rotate between each other, or move in positions to sort of complement each other.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Odegaard is just a very, very good player, and I think his future is just so bright. And that move to Arsenal, I think, is going to be a monumental move. I think where Arsenal is going is in a positive direction. They're still missing some pieces to that puzzle,
Hmm.
but they're going there. They're getting there in the right direction, and having a player like Fabio Vieira that can maybe even push Odegaard. I think Odegaard's position is pretty much safe for now, but having that extra player there to push to compete with in training grounds, it's huge. That's like behind the scenes stuff on how the difference that it can make to a team where you have that competition at every single day at practice. I want to one up the next guy that I'm competing with. It definitely pushes that player to do well and perform. And like I said, there's that group of players in that attack, whether it's the number 10 positions or the players out in the wing. They're all going to be competing with each other. With the addition of Fabio Vieira, who is versatile, can play all along that attacking front. It can push some buttons and maybe push the players to be hungry and be at their absolute best every single day. So
Awesome.
I think it's a good move. I think that you guys are going in the right direction, and I hope Arsenal, even though Arsenal is not my EPL team, but I do want them to do well because the team is so big and the fans are fantastic fans. They're all over the world. The name is everywhere, and that legacy that they had in the late '90s to the to 2008, 2009. It was a great team to watch, and you want teams that have that culture, that has that history, to do well, to be in the realm of the Man Cities, the Man Uniteds, the Liverpools, Chelseas, etc., etc. So I hope you guys do well, and I hope Fabio Vieira helps you guys get there.
Oh, thank you, man. Thank you. So pleasure once again talking to you, Rui and
Yeah.
Abayomi, and
All right, thank you, sir.
thank you very much for sharing your thoughts and opinions. I'm pretty sure we should be meeting more often. Then we'll be having more of such recordings, and then we'll have interesting profiles, of course, coming up with Porto's conveyor belt, talent conveyor belt. It's I won't be surprised if in case we have a similar conversation about a different player at all in the near future. So yeah, hoping definitely to talk to you guys. Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you for having me
Thank
on.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Cheers.
for having me.
Cheers.
Cheers.
I think I ended it.